Welcome to Casual Sundays on Foxtrot Whiskey Bravo. I'm your host, Beth. You are tuned to episode number 8. It is Please Help, I Have Check Ride Stress to the max, right? Before we get started, let's just do some brief stuff. I'd like to apologize. I was MIA for a few months. What I was working on was I was trying to get my a glider add-on to my commercial. I'm very close. I just need a couple more toes. I already soloed, and you have to get at least 20 toes in. I don't have my 20 toes in yet. And the beginning of this year, on February 14th, 2019, I'm happy to say I'm now a CFI, which is a Certified Flight Instructor. Before this, I had the ability to teach ground stuff. Now I could teach ground, simulator, and flying in a single-engine airplane. I'll talk more about my experience in next episodes, but right now we're talking about this episode. If you have any questions or concerns or comments, always feel free to send me an email. My email is nerdybethtx@gmail.com, which is nerdybethtx@gmail.com. Another way to get a hold of me is always on social media. My social media is nerdybethtx, and you can find me on Instagram and on Twitter. If you want to know when I'm going to do more episodes, just make sure to follow me on one of those platforms, and I will post something on one of those platforms when the next episode will be out. And I'd like to say thank you if this is your first time listening to Foxtrot Whiskey Bravo. If you're returning, I say thank you. And I'm so sorry it took me so long to get back. I've been a little busy. Now sit back and enjoy the flight on Foxtrot Whiskey Bravo. So today's podcast is Please Help, I Have Check Ride Stress to the max. We all have check ride stress. It doesn't matter if this is your first check ride or your fourth or your fifth. We all have check ride stress. And I hope this podcast helps you a little bit relieve your stress and go in there with a positive attitude saying you're going to pass your check ride the first time. To date, I have not failed any of my written exams and I have not failed any of my check rides because I go in there and I'm prepared. So you might be asking yourself, what is a check ride, right? A check ride is the last portion you have to do in order to receive your certification or your new rating to your license. Your check ride consists of 2 portions. The first portion is always going to be an oral examination, and the second portion is your flight. You cannot do the flight portion unless you pass the oral portion of your check ride. In this podcast, episode number 8, we are talking about nothing. Oh, sorry about this. We are talking only about the oral portion of your check ride. Now, step 1 to be successful on the oral portion of your check ride is you want to make sure you pass your written exam with the 85% or higher. Yes, I said 85%. Yes, I know 70% is required, but really, do you want to make a 70% on your written portion of your exam? It's easy. It's multiple choice, and you can study for it. You want to make the highest grade you possibly can. Just imagine. You're flying around an airplane, you have your first passenger up, which is your best friend, right? And your best friend is curious and wants to become a pilot. And then you tell your best friend that you had to take a written exam and you do these lessons and you do a check ride. And your best friend asks you, what did you make on your written exam? And you tell your best friend you made a 70. I'm pretty sure the eyes will get really big and now start doubting if they should be in that airplane with you or not, right? Because you could do better than a 70. You could do much better than 70. And also, everything that you miss on your written exam, not the specific question, but the topics that you missed on your written exam, your examiner, which is called the designated pilot examiner, I'll refer to that person as examiner or DPE, is required to cover all those topics that you missed. So, sometimes you're sitting down and you hear people talking about the check rides, and they tell you that their check ride was 3 hours or 4 hours long, and then the next person tells you their check ride was 6 hours long for a private pilot check ride, and you wonder why. Sometimes those whys are maybe this person, I don't know for sure, but sometimes these whys are maybe this person made a 70 on their written exam, and they miss a lot of questions, so the DP is required to cover all those topics that you missed on your written exam, which is going to make you more stressful, make you more nervous, gives you more questions, and most likely gives you a way to dig yourself in a hole that you can't get out. You want to go in there with the 85 or higher. Now, the next thing you'll be asking, okay, you might ask, when am I supposed to take this written exam, right? You know what? I suggest you take this written exam right before you solo or right after you solo, depending how actively you are flying. Those written exams are good for 2 whole years, right? So if you're not flying actively, I'll wait towards the end. If you're flying very actively, I would take it right before I solo or right after I solo, especially if you're flying like 2 or 3 times a week. If you're flying 2 or 3 times a week and you already soloed and it's good weather, you might have your check right like in 2 months, 3 months tops, just depending on the maintenance of the aircraft, your availability, your DP availability, and your CFI knowing that availability, right? So depending on these factors and money, don't forget the money part, right? That's just when you're going to be taking your check ride. So that's when you want to do your written exam. Unless you're going to one of these places that you get your private done in 3 months, like at an ATP or Flight Safety or American Flyers, all these programs, everything happens really fast. You might want to start studying for your written exam before you go into those schools. So say you're planning to go to ATP in August of this year, I would suggest you start studying right now in May. So when August comes around, hopefully you're really close to getting ready to take your written exam. So you don't have that extra stress on you besides flying and studying. And after you do your written exam, right? So say you do your written exam, you get a printout of your score, and your score is going to be somewhere on the top right corner, I believe. I can remember it. And towards the bottom, it's going to tell you these things are called PLT or PTL. I always get the acronym confused, codes, right? But you look up these codes, and these codes will tell you your weak areas, right? The topics that you missed on your knowledge exam, which is your written exam. Those are the areas that your CFI is going to have to cover with you. So make sure you start going over them. He or she is going to have to cover them, and those are the areas that your DP is going to have to cover on your check ride. I will have a link in the description box that will have a list in the PDF, all these PLT codes that will go along with any written exam that you're taking. You just look up the PLT code and it'll tell you what topics that you need to brush up on. Make sure you're ready for your check ride. Step 2 of being successful on the oral portion of your check ride is buy the most current ACS available. ACS is the Airman Certification Standards. Will you buy this document? Or, it's online for free from the FAA. Make sure it's the most available one. The best way to get the available one is go to the FAA website, go to the ACS, and it'll tell you the effective date. You want to get the most current one possible. You could buy these books. The one I have in my hand, it costs $9.95. You could buy them from your flight school, or you could go on the FAA website and you could print it out yourself. Don't use your printer at home. What I do is that I print it out at my flight school when no one's around to save myself money. That's how you save money. But I'm just amazed at how many people do not have this document with them. This is what your CFI and your DPE is almost basing their syllabus on, right? This is what they're basing their syllabus on for your CFI, and this is also what the DPE is going to be basing your check ride on. The oral portion of your check ride and the flying portion of your check ride are all found in this ACS document, which is Airman Certification Standard Document. Your check ride is not a secret at all. You should know what's expected from you and is in this document. So make sure you get this document. Okay, so let's continue on. Just think, if someone would give you a template and they tell you you can make $5,000 legally in a month if you follow this template, would you follow it? Most everybody would say yes. Okay, I would say yes because I want $5,000 in a month. I just follow some template. It's not a scheme. I don't put no money down. Of course I'll follow it. This is the exact same thing the ACS or your PTS, depending on what exam you're taking, is. It's a template to pass your check ride, to know what is covered on your check ride. Now you went online or you went to your flight school and you bought this document called the ACS. You're like, I have this thing. I have no idea what it is, right? So I'm going to give you a quick summary how it works. It's broken into different sections by Roman numerals. For example, I'm looking at the private pilot one for ACS. Roman number 1, it says pre-flight preparation, right? So number 1 is pre-flight preparation. Under Roman number 1, it says task A, right? Task A says pilot qualifications, right? So your DP most likely going to start right here, and he's going to tell you, okay, we're going to pilot qualifications, and he's going to start digging in right here, right? So before he starts, you already know what he's going to start at. And the next underneath it says references, right? The references are things you need to help you find out information, find information over the topics he'll be asking you, right? To find the correct answers to the questions he might be asking you. The next thing is objective. The objective is the why or the purpose of that very specific task he's covering. So pilot qualification and your objectives, right? Some references that you might want to get, I'm going to go through them real quickly, is a current copy of the FAR AIM. You get the FAR AIM as a hard copy, or you could put it on your iPad or your notebook as a PDF. You want the FAA Flying Handbook. You want the FAA Risk Manager Handbook. And you want the FAA Pilot Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge. And you want to get any advisory circulars, which is called ACs. And you need your POH for your airplane, which is Pilot Operation Handbook, or your flight manual for your specific airplane. And you want the PLT documents. These are things that you should have with you. Those are some of the reference materials. Okay, the next thing under pre-flight pilot qualification, we talked about references, we talked about the objective, which is the why and the purpose. Next is the knowledge, right? The knowledge is what you have to know. It tells you exactly what you must know. And if you don't know it, you go back to the references to find your answers. In this section, under knowledge, the DP has to ask you a minimum of one question. He has to ask you also the things that you miss, the topics that you miss on your knowledge, which is your written exam, if it's covered under this topic. And it's a minimum one, right? If he wants to, he can ask you more than one thing. If he feels or she feels, or your examiner feels like you are weak and they want to figure out how weak you are in a certain area, they could dig and dig and dig, right? But they have to ask you a minimum of one thing. They can ask you more than one thing. And sometimes it states otherwise of how many things they must ask you in one specific area. The next thing is called the risk management, right? Under the risk management, the examiner, which is your DP, he or she must ask you at least one thing in this area. They can ask you more than one thing, but they have to ask you one thing. I looked at a webinar recently, and a question a lot of people miss is that they don't know what the word proficiency and currency means. So make sure you go back and you understand what the difference between those two are, and that's under the very first one under pilot qualifications. The last section is called skills. Under skills, this section right here is called skills, and this is what you must either going to perform, explain, demonstrate, or do, and you must do all under the skills task. You must do all of them. So let's do a quick review. You have the knowledge one. He or she must ask you one. They can ask you more than one, depending on what they feel like and how many on your knowledge test. Under risk management, they must also ask you a minimum one. Under skills, they have to ask you everything under skills. So step 1, you get really good on your knowledge test. Step 2, you have this ACS. Step 3 is still more about the ACS, right? So you're getting ready for the oral portion of your check, right? You have your ACS out. You want to know, how many questions he or she might ask you. Let's dig a little bit deeper into this ACS topic. So step 3, I put go through the ACS one operation at a time. Make sure you can talk fluently and confidently about that operation. So make sure, even though they might ask you one, make sure you can talk about every single thing in that operation that you might have to know. If you get tired and you're tired of reading, there's other things that you could do, especially if you're a visual learner. If you're a visual learner, go on YouTube. Look for some YouTube videos. Make sure they're from CFIs doing it. If you're auditory, M0A I use this. So M0A have a really good private pilot audio books that you can listen to. What I did is that I saved them to my iPad and Bluetooth them in my car. I'm always driving, and I always listen to those things while I was driving for my private. Another thing you have to do, ask your flight instructor to explain. You're paying your flight instructor, so make sure you are making sure he or she's doing their job correctly. Ask them a lot of questions. Questions you might have on what area operations might be on your check, right? All the areas of operation can be fair game unless they specifically do not apply. So know all of them in your area. For example, if you're doing a private pilot check ride in a single engine land airplane, you do not need to know the stuff for seaplanes or multi-engine for private pilot. If under this task something does not apply for your check ride in the aircraft, you don't need to know it. Just mark it out. So you're only doing you're taking a test over. So you're doing private pilot single SCL. Those are the only ones that you have to know. You have to know nothing about a sea base. You have to know nothing about having one engine one operative. You have to know nothing about VMC because you're not doing that check ride. Step 4. We are done now. So step 4, we're not done completely, but we talked about already, like I said, we talked about the ACS in 2 steps already. Now step 4 is review the sections in your FAR aims which will apply. Make sure you have your FAR aim out. I always do a hard copy. I buy some little sticky tabs, and I tab out the sections in my FAR aim. On my website, there's going to be a document, and the document is going to be some helpful, not all of them, some helpful areas that you should mark off on your FAR aim, and make sure you read them and know how to find them. Remember, my website is nerdybethtx.com, and I will put a link to that document. In your chart supplement, so you have to have a chart supplement with you, right? In your chart supplement, mark off your local airport, and make sure you understand whatever is written in those pages, right? So get your chart supplement out, go to your local airports, mark them off, and make sure you understand everything that's in there. All the acronyms, all the abbreviations, the time is going to be open or closed airport. If it's closed, what do you have to do to turn on the lighting? All that's found in your chart supplement book. Step 5, right? Getting ready for the oral portion of your check, right? My step 5 is the most missed areas will be on your VFR navigational chart. Go through your chart and make sure you know each symbol, and right before your chart, a little fold on the side, it tells you what the symbols are, and know the airspace requirements. Start at the ground level and work your way all the way up to 18,000 feet. Because a lot of people miss those questions. So start off at just a regular area, ground level, all the way 18,000 feet, and then go to somewhere like airports or Class Charlie or Class Delta or Class Echo airspace or Gulf airspace, and work your way all the way up through the airspaces. And after you do that one for your area, go to Sky Vector and do the same for a more complicated area, like for example LAX. Also, the links on my website, under videos, under for private pilot, there's a video that I use. It's about like 2 hours. It's a long YouTube video. It's 2 hours long, and that one goes through some of the most complicated airspaces, and it goes through all the ones that you might see. I mean, 2 hours, but it's worth it. Exactly what I did right for my private pilot. I sat down, I watched that video like 2 times. I fell asleep a couple of times. I went through it. I made sure I was solid on my navigational chart. A lot of people miss that. So go through that one. Step 6. Make sure you know your aircraft systems in your airplane. Go grab the POH and go over them. I mean, like, you have to know them. If it's in your airplane, you have to know how to use and operate them. If your airplane has an autopilot, guess what? DP can ask you a question on the autopilot. Anything in your airplane is fair game. So do not expect, like, you know what? My teacher never covered the autopilot for me. Therefore, my private pilot check right autopilot is not going to be a question on my systems. It might be something very, very simple, as in, where does your autopilot get its static source from? I mean, so make sure you know, or what happens, you're flying with your autopilot on, and I don't know, your pitot-static system get clogged. What's going to happen? Well, how is it going to affect your autopilot? And those kind of stuff could be found in your POH under emergencies. Just read it so you can know, just in case they ask you a question, you know where to find it at. Depending on your DPE, which is Designated Pilot Examiner, some might allow you to use the printed diagrams to help you explain the system. Some might have you draw them out. I was lucky. A couple of my friends were lucky that the examiners they use, examiner I use, did not require us to draw any diagram out. Yes, I could draw them, but I don't need to. I'll be so stressed about drawing, so I worry about how to explain them. So I marked them off in the POH, and I explain my system by using the POH, and that's about it. So make sure you know all your systems, how they work, any failures that might happen. Also, make sure you read your emergency and your amplified procedures for the airplane that you're flying. The DP will ask some kind of emergency in the airplane. Usually something that like a fire might happen, or if your flaps don't go down, or if your trim is not working, what can you do if something like that might happen? So make sure you go through those, and what you're supposed to do is in your POH. Usually the bold items in your POH are the ones in the box are the ones that you have to have memorized. And you always verify with the checklist, right? So, you know your emergencies. You should have the stuff that are memorized or bold, but you always verify with the checklist, right? You know, if you're going to have like something wrong with your engine's going to go out, you're supposed to already know. You're supposed to do like ABCs, right? Your airspeed. You want to go to airspeed, look for your best place to land. And then you want to confess or climb or you have no Right, so you know your ABCs. Remember, A is for your airspeed. B is going to be for your best place to land. And maybe go like airspeed is your best glide. Know your best glide for your airplane. C is your checklist. Make sure you go through your checklist slowly. Always touch and verify. And then when you have time, you wanna squawk 7700, and then you want to declare emergency, and you're gonna execute emergency landing. Right, so you always stay calm. So the DP is going to give you some type of emergency, so know what you're supposed to do in an emergency. And he could ask you this stuff on the oral portion of your check ride. Step 7 are doing really well in the oral portion of your check ride. I have not talked about it yet. I'm getting kind of tired. I'm sorry, my voice is going out. I recorded this episode 3 times already because I kept on deleting it on accident. So I put a pause, I was putting delete. So the next step I said was step 7 for your getting oral portion of your check ride. Be prepared. Have everything organized, right? So if your check ride is going to start at 9 a.m., I suggest you get there by 7:45. Give yourself 15 minutes, get all your junk out of your car. Give the second 30 minutes. Next 30 minutes, you're going to prepare. So have all your books set out, have all your copies ready, get the copy of the POAs, get a copy of your maintenance stuff. And go about maintenance real quick. What I always do for my check ride is going to be on a Friday or Saturday. I go through the maintenance logs 2 or 3 days before my check ride to make sure everything is complete and is up to date. You do not want to fail a check ride because you're bringing an airplane that is not airworthy. Make sure you do it ahead of time. Don't do it the morning of, because that's extra stress for you. What if the maintenance person's there and the maintenance books are locked up and no one's there to help you, right? You want to get your maintenance stuff done ahead of time. Make sure they know you have your check ride and you tell the maintenance guy, I need these books on Saturday morning. Please leave them on Friday, right? If you don't go back to the airport on Friday, you call the airport on Friday and make sure they got these maintenance books put up for you. Like taken out of lock so you can use them for your check ride. Make sure everything's up to date. So then the next thing you want to do is have all your documents that you need ready for your check ride. You get any book that you use only FAA books, and you can use those on your check ride, but you cannot use them for every other answer, right? So maybe like 2 or 3 answers, you forgot something and you want to go back to your documents to look over them, make sure that you're saying is correct, right? You do not want to say something on your check ride that is like a what if, or you're not confident, right? Only say things that you're confident. And you're not confident and you tell examiner, you know what? I need to look this up. Can we go to the next question and we'll come back to this one next time because I know the answer. I just have a little brain gap, fart, or however you want to call it. And you come right back to it, right? So make sure you only say things that you're confident in your answer. In order to be confident in your answers, you want to get that ACS out and go to the ACS and know your knowledge, risk, and your skills. That's how you pass your check ride. Remember, your check ride, everything is there for you. You know what's going to be required, and you ask other people also, right? Ask other people, how is this examiner? They'll tell you what the examiners are real picky on, right? So just make sure you ask them. So you got there early, you got your maintenance book done, you got your maintenance stuff, log books ready, you got the POH ready, you go outside, the next 10 minutes, 20 minutes, you go outside, you make sure the airplane's topped off, you make sure the airplane's ready to go, you make sure the airplane is ready, right? So when you pass your oral, you do the flight portion, you already did a pre-flight by yourself. You still gonna do a pre-flight with the examiner asking you questions, but you already did a pre-flight by yourself and you know that the airplane is ready to go, right? You want to go and walk around and make sure your airplane is ready to go before you take the DP out there and do your pre-flight check ride with him. I always do that ahead of time. Something else you could do is, so your check ride is coming up. You're already at the FBO, or at your flight school. You have all your paperwork done. You're already done your stuff, your walk around, you're sitting there, you have 15-20 minutes for the examiner gets there. Sit back and relax. take a deep breath, go use the restroom. I gotta go use the restroom all the time, so I go use the restroom. I come back, and I'm a solitaire freak, right? So they help me relax in the high stressful situations. I play solitaire, and I can beat a whole game of solitaire in a minute and 15 seconds, right? So you do whatever you have to do right before DP goes in there, just to relax. Just sit there, relax, and just be ready. And when he comes in, you are prepared. You are confident in yourself. You tell yourself, I'm going to pass my oral portion of my check ride and the flying portion of my check ride because I prepared for my check ride. Those are my 7 steps, how to pass the oral portion of your check ride. I'm thankful that you kept listening to this long. This podcast is probably going to be like 35 minutes long. Thank you for listening to it. I hope this helped you out. If you have any questions, make sure you email me. My email is nerdybethtx at gmail.com. Go to my website to find useful oral prep questions with answers that you can study and you can prepare yourself for. That's nerdybethtx.com. What I did was I had my best friend, little girl, quiz me. She read the questions, I read the answer, I gave her a little crayon, a little map color, and she circled the ones I got wrong. So I had someone quiz me. So make sure you go to my website. I have useful stuff on there. Make sure you leave a review. Please leave reviews, because the more reviews you leave, the higher rating my podcast have in this aviation stuff. And if someone puts in, flying and questions and check rides, they're most likely going to see the podcast, especially if you like the podcast. Please leave a 5-star review if you liked what you heard and you want to hear more about it. If you have a topic you want me to cover, just inbox me. I'll cover the topic. I can't tell you when I'll cover it, but I'll cover it as soon as I can, and I'll let you know when I put it out. Make sure you listen to the other podcasts. I have a really good one about scholarships that really helped. You need help with scholarships, please inbox me. I'll help you with pointing you in the right directions. I will not do your essay for you, and I will not do your essay for you. Ask those questions. I would not do it. Thank you for listening to Foxtrot Whiskey Bravo, and I hope you have a great day. This is your girl Beth saying goodbye. Bye.